I think a couple different things. Life is hard. And when you have a supportive group and you're kind of able to say, this is hard, but I can keep going and have the motivation, and people are building you up and pouring into it, it's a lot easier than either shame or guilt or maladaptive messages you've learned as a child, maladaptive habits that you've learned from an experience are holding you back. There's a little bit more of a, I have to do it by myself. I'm alone in this process. Versus this community, because we're relational. Humans are relational, right? I'm coming back to that, but we are, right? And so when we have a whole community building us up, that's very different than like, I feel alone. Trauma, adverse experiences robs us of a sense of safety, but it also robs us of a sense of human connection, of it fuels isolation. Shame fuels isolation. I also love working with people who are motivated to be able to process through and work through potentially past trauma or adverse experiences that they've gone through, that it's just holding them back. And a lot of times with clients like that, recognizing they're pouring all this energy and time building this foundation, and sometimes the trauma and the it just keeps coming out, right? But that's because you're filling the space with solid stuff. So people willing to roll with that process and recognize it might not be 3 sessions and it's done, but I'm here for that job. And so sometimes we have to pause or pivot and adjust, and that's 100% okay. But let's keep building that solid foundation. People going through life changes, transitions, whether that's becoming a new mom, having some work transitions, relationship transitions, difficulties parenting as kids get older, or just some of those changes. Love working, or even going into college, love working with people. Just, this is hard. Life is hard. Let's find a way to take a deep breath, step back, and then just be able to roll with that. I love that population. 2 things. One, I'm very upfront with my clients about it really is what you put into it, whether it's in front of a screen or in office. If you want to see change or results, you've got to put something in there and be present. And then 2, I just really try to make it conversational, making sure they're very aware that it is still confidential here. I'm still doing all the things. I try to be mindful of their situation or potential hiccups. And sometimes there are like tech issues or with internet, but for the most part, just making it conversational and more like a FaceTime versus a very sterilized. Yeah, I took working through a certification in NDIT, which is a process where a neurologist, and I think she has her psychology degree specifically, she developed a process looking at how the brain works and trying to work with the brain to help people with either trauma or anxiety or depression, right? And so she's a very bottom up, focuses on the body, the mind, the going into the cognitive stuff. Her name's Jennifer Sweet. And she said the number one thing in her research where she sees people make progress or not make progress is that therapeutic alliance. You driven, right? Meaning like what is the change you want to see and how do we get there? And with that comes psychoeducation, with normalization of this reaction isn't necessarily just you, right? This is sometimes the reactions or the behaviors that we're having are driven based on past experiences and instinct. And so recognizing that, yes, this is hard because we're making a change inside as well as here, right? And so some of that is going to take time. So like I said, psychoeducation, some mind-body connection is big, but also just talking through and validating experiences that they have been, or even looking at problematic or challenging thinking that may be actually hurting the situation versus helping. And then like, how do we reframe, or I like to use the word pivot, right? Because we're still in the same spot where we're just changing focus. I heard a speaker one time say that if I pivot 1 degree, I just did ish, right here, it makes no difference. But if we were to go out 2 miles, that 1 degree would make a big difference, right? And so just finding that where do we have that room to pivot And does it look like a talking cognitive story processing, or is it a biosocial mind-body connection? And so that's kind of where, and then from there on, it's problem solving and communication skills. And like I said, validation and listening and empathizing, and where we feel like you need to go. If you can't vibe or trust, or it feels uncomfortable, then you're not going to open up, and there's already a disconnect there. And so my thing is, yes, psychoeducation, some top down, bottom up stuff. I know it's very therapeutic talk. It's my job to know what that means, but figuring all the techniques out, but ultimately that there is trust and compassion and empathy and seeing you as a person, and that there is a relationship, and it's not one way. Yes, it's focused on you, but that we are two people working towards what you're hoping to accomplish. My approach is probably a little bit more informal versus actual worksheets or a specific 12-step or 10-week this or that. But I appreciate the flexibility and to be able to pause and address, because sometimes in that life happens and we have to pause and pivot.